Folks connecting to audio.
Good evening, people. We're just letting folks in from the waiting room. Thanks for your patience.
Whoa, this is a lot of people. This is exciting.
All right, I think the bulk of folks have joined us for this evening, and let's go ahead and get started.
Hey. Hello, I'm Nancy Tam Davis. I'm your conference lay leader and have been for a while now. And I want to welcome you to this event. Many of you as conference members, laity members, may be new to this. You're coming to the first conference you've been to and wondering what's going to happen and what you're supposed to do and how you do that. And that's what this session tonight is all about. Now, while I'm introducing myself and others, what we'd like you to do is go into the chat and enter a little bit of information about you. What is your name? And you'll find these instructions in chat. Your name, your church, your congregation that you attend, the pronouns that you would prefer to be used when talking with you, land acknowledgement, and for example, I'm on Puyallup lands, Puyallup and Duwamish lands. And are you a new member of annual conference or a returning one? So again, I'll go through this quickly for myself. What you put in, and I'll give the example. I'm Nancy Tam Davis. I attend United Church and University Place. I am, you can call me she, her, hers, and I love it when you call me by my name. I am on Puyallup lands and I have been to many annual conferences. However, never as a lay member elected from a church. As a conference lay leader, I am a member. So while you're putting that in, I'd like to take an opportunity to show you who some of the Board of Laity are. And Angelina Goldwell, we're going to be hearing from a minute. She is currently our Associate Conference Lay Leader. John Townsend, who is the Inland District Lay Leader, and Keith Score, who is with the Puget Sound District. And fortunately, they've all been able to join us here tonight. Let me hand this off now to Angelina. Would you introduce yourself?
Absolutely, I'd be happy to. Good evening, everyone. My name is Angelina Goldwell. I am the Associate Conference Lay Leader for PNW. I am on staff at the First United Methodist Church of Olympia. My pronouns are she, hers. I'm currently talking to you from the ancestral lands of the Nisqually, Coast Salish, and Cowlitz peoples. And I was a young adult delegate to annual conference for 1 year before I was elected into my current position. So I'm a returning member, and I'm so glad to be here. And I'm going to pass it off to John to introduce himself.
There we go. Hi, I am John Townsend. I am the Inland District Lay Leader. My wife and I attend Community United Methodist Church in Coeur d'Alene. We live just inside of Washington on lands of the Spokanes. Also, I'd like to extend my welcome to all of you, and we're looking forward to a productive session this evening and, as usual, at annual conference. So I would call on Keith.
Well, thank you, John. My name is Keith Score. I'm the district lay leader of Puget Sound Missional District. My home church is Edmonds United Methodist Church on the ancestral lands of numerous tribes that we are doing our best to try to identify the various tribes that are associated with the property that we worship on. And we choose not to at this time make a definitive statement because we've been studying it for a couple of years and we're continuing to study it. And we want to be accurate in our representation when we do make a statement. Okay, I use the pronouns he, him. And I'd like to welcome particularly my siblings from Puget Sound District, but all of my siblings from across the conference area. And I will pass it back to Nancy.
I am so lucky to work with this team of people and others, some of whom could not be here tonight. Angelina now start us out. John is going to start us out with an opening prayer. I'll get it right. Please join me in prayer with John.
Yes, if we would be in an attitude of prayer. Just and compassionate God, once again, we thank you for the blessings of a technology that allows us to be together across the distance. It allows us to undertake the audacious but truly holy task of trying to discern what it is that you want, not what we want, but what you want for your church in this time and this place. Be with us as we start that journey. Give us your guidance. Help us to see where you are calling us to go. All these things we ask in the name of your Son and our Savior, Jesus the Christ. Amen. And now I believe Angelina is going to talk to us about the pre-conference materials, the first set of initials that you'll learn when you go to annual conference, the PCH, the pre-conference handbook. Angelina?
That's right. Thanks so much, John. So I am optimistic that all of you have had the opportunity to look at the website for all of our important annual conference information. I also just want to welcome Patrick Scriven and Terry Toby, who are our liaisons, are the folks who are helping make this happen from the conference staff. So I'm so glad they're here. So if you have not been to this website before, you can either follow along with me on the share screen that I'm about to pull up, or you can click that link and follow along just with the sound of my voice. So I'm really hoping that you all have had a chance to check out the this website, and I just want to point out a couple of things that are important for you to know, just in case you may not have noticed. So I'm going to start with the lay members section. There is a lay members resource page. It is also available in Spanish. And when you click on that lay member resource page, especially if you are new, if this is your first annual conference, it is going to give you a whole, first time attending annual conference, let's say. It's going to give you a whole lot of information. I'm not going to read all of it to you because it's right there for you to review on the website, but it tells you a little bit more about who participates in our annual conference and what's going to happen there. So we are pretty excited. Of course, we're online. This is so our schedule is a little different than it would be if we were in person, but there are going to be some lovely worship opportunities coming at you throughout the conference schedule. But most importantly, this document talks to you a little, helps you understand a little bit better what it means to be a lay member to annual conference and what your role is. So part of your role is preparing for annual conference, and part of that preparation involves reading all of the pre-conference materials so that you will be well prepared. At annual conference itself, your role is to listen deeply, to vote, to make your voice heard as the opportunity arises. And John's going to talk a little bit more about the schedule and while the short answer to what part should you attend is you should attend everything, John will get a little bit more into the details of what each part of it is. We're going to be talking a little bit more later about petitions and also about how to effectively use Robert's rules in petitions. And then, of course, the last thing you're going to want to do after annual conference is report back to your local church about what it is that you heard and saw and things that are going to impact your local congregation. So, but a couple of things I really, really wanted to highlight for you. Let me pull it up right here, is right here. Before annual conference session, there are two documents that we really recommend that you read. One is the conference rules. So you just click that link right there and it'll take you straight to them. It's about 40 pages, but I promise it goes real fast. It mainly talks about the first part is about who participates in annual conference. Part of it is what are the rules for when we are all together at annual conference, and knowing what these things are will help you understand the resolutions or the recommendations that we're going to be hearing and voting on as we go forward. I would also recommend to you, back from that resource page, there is a tip sheet on how to use motions and things in Robert's Rules. We'll be getting into that a little bit later in more detail in our conversation, but if you click that link, it takes you to this handy PDF that I would recommend you just keep open on your browser so you can pull it up. And again, we'll go into more detail on what this is. And of course, the other thing we would want you to take a look at here under downloads is where you would find the rest of your pre-conference materials that you would want to review. So this would include your district superintendent reports, which is going to tell you all about what's been happening in your particular district. And then you could read other district reports to see what's been happening, get a picture of what's been happening in the entire annual conference in the past year. Hear about the financial reports, church closures, ministry area reports are also going to help you fill in that picture of all the things that are happening in our annual conference. And then finally, the recommendations. And you want to read through all of those. There are 12 at this point that we will be considering at annual conference. These are the things that we are going to vote on. So it really would benefit you to read through those. And if you have any questions or anything that you're confused about, that's a great time to reach out to your pastor or to other lay members in your congregation if you have more than one, or folks you know who have attended annual conference in the past who can help explain to you if you have questions about what these all are. So you'll notice that the majority of them have to do with administrative business, and then there are some specific sort of action taking resolutions. But yeah, so this was my big pitch for there is so much information on the website. It will be a boon to you if you take the time to review all of it, and it'll make your conference experience so much fuller. I'm just going to check the chat and see if, these are all perfect. Thank you, Patrick. These are all folks still checking in. Thank you all so much for doing that. It's always good to know who's here. But yeah, so that's and then of course, updates will give you if there are any updates that we need to know about. But yeah, please utilize the website, download the things it recommends you to download, and ask if you have questions. And that's pretty much what I got there, unless Nancy or John has anything additional to add before I turn it over to John to talk about conference schedule. Okay. And then, of course, if anyone has any burning questions, you can always drop those in the chat, and we'll do our best to be present to those. But all right, John, would you like me to pull up the conference schedule page for you?
Yeah, you could. Yeah, if you can do that, that would be great, as a matter of fact.
Excellent.
And here we go. Wonderful. We are actually at Laity Orientation, and then focus sessions start tomorrow. And that focus session will have a panel discussion about creating justice, and it may involve a lot of good discussion. If you've never been at a focus session before, there's also information on how those are going to work. We do not need any kind of special ID code. I hope I remember to come back to that later. For voting at focus sessions, the chairperson will be using the Zoom platform to do that. And the focus sessions then, if there's a certain percentage of the vote in favor of things, they end up on what's known as a consent calendar. And those come to the floor. If you've been at annual conference before, you understand that. My first time, I didn't understand consent calendars, but we then vote on a consent calendar, which means that we affirm the vote of what happened at the focus session. It's a really efficient way of dealing with a lot of legislation. I don't see that there's a lot of legislation this year. There's only 12 resolutions right now. Nonetheless, that's how that works. So that's the first one. The second one, as Angelina mentioned, is following week on the Monday the 13th. That's the administrative focus session. That's the first 11 recommendations that are there. That would have the proposed budget for the next year, which is always a fascinating document to look at and see how our apportionments and our funds and the things we value based on where we spend our money. There's a lot of work goes into preparing that budget. So take a look at that. That also has items about pensions, church closures, which is one thing that, even though there is a sufficiently large vote in a focus session, does not go on a consent calendar. We vote on each church closure individually. There is a section that Angelina showed us on memoirs and church closures that will talk about each of those. You should take a look at that also. I always find the administrative focus session to be fascinating, but that some folks find it kind of boring, but I find it to be fascinating. And there can be some substantial debate on items at that session. So again, that's one that I would not miss. The following day on the 14th is the laity session. There's a great description of what's going to happen at the laity session there under more info if you follow that link. I think that the conference lay leaders have worked hard to prepare a really good laity session. It's also especially important for Pacific Northwest Conference, and we'll talk more about this later, because we will be electing a new associate conference lay leader. Angelina has given us 4 years of really serious, dedicated hard work and service. But she has a really active child who really needs some close attention. And so that's where her focus needs to be, and that's where her focus should be. So we will be electing a new associate conference leader. And so we need to be at that laity session. It looks like it's going to be really good. Nancy and the other lay leaders, I think, have done a really good on that. Sunday the 19th is opening session for us. And then on the 21st is what's known as a plenary session. Plenary means the gathering of the whole. You might call it a general session, but plenary means a gathering of the whole. That looks almost forbidding from 9 in the morning until 7 at night. But I'm pretty sure that we'll take a break for lunch and for dinner. And one of the beauties of doing things like this on Zoom is that you can hit mute and mute your video and mute your audio and drink a cup of coffee and so forth and still listen to what's going on. That is an opportunity when we will see a bunch of little short videos about various things, Lay Servant Ministries and Hispanic Lay Missioner Program are a couple I know that are on deck. I don't know whether they'll get shown or not, but there's some others. That's always good. Last year, we noted that we did not have a lot of debate on the floor at the plenary session, but there again, there can be a lot of debate, and this is where we will vote on things. You will see next week, if you are a lay member of the annual conference and you have voice and vote, you will see next week an email that will give you your 6-digit ID code. You will need that code and a second device to be able to vote. I consider myself somewhat of a Luddite when it comes to technology, and I figured it out. So yeah, I'm sure that all of you can. It's actually a pretty slick system. So look for that ID code sometime next week, probably late next week, if I remember correctly. Then on the 22nd at 11 in the morning is ordination and commissioning service. Those are always important to be at, to support those folks that have been called to ordination. I do not know how many candidates or how many people will be ordained or commissioned this year, but that's always an important time to be there. We fast forward then until the 25th, which is a closing session at 9 in the morning. Angelita put the website up. I'm not, maybe some, Patrick or Terry may have put it directly in a chat, but it's www.pnwumc.org/AC2022. You can find the conference schedule header and more information. That'll get you down to the pre-conference stuff that Angelina showed us. Just to refresh you, go over that again, the district superintendent's reports, the financials, the memoirs on closures, ministry area reports, for example, older adult ministries, board of laity, et cetera, et cetera. I think the board of ordained ministry will report there. All of those various boards and agencies are there, and other reports from the seminaries. A lot of that's pretty darn interesting reading. Recommendations, petitions, legislation, and voting's there, and I mentioned the ID stuff. So Nancy or Angelina, if you'd like to add anything to that, or I could attempt to entertain a question or two if there are any.
Go ahead and entertain questions. Be good time for it.
And I noticed, yeah, there is a note in the chat about commissioning ordination, around 90 minutes was put in there. There we go.
I think the only thing I would add, John, to your earlier comments and excellent review of everything is that because the plenary session is, as John mentioned, is pretty chock-a-block with various things. We'll be hearing reports, we'll be likely engaging in some worship. The plenary session is not really where discussion happens for resolutions. That's really in the focus sessions. So, which is why we highly, highly recommend reviewing those petitions and reviewing the Roberts Rules PDF so that you can engage fully in that opportunity for conversation, because it'll be trickier at the plenary session. Not impossible, certainly, but it's usually a very full schedule, and so there is not as much time for discussion at that opportunity. So really, really shameless plug here, go to the focus sessions. You will learn so much while you are there.
And that's absolutely true. The focus sessions is where the work really gets done. It's I don't know the best analogy to make. The one that I happen to like is that in our Congress, in our United States Congress, the work is really done in the legislative committees. That's where the work really gets done, regardless of what you actually see on television. But it's the work is done in those committees, and that's what happens here too. I've always been impressed with what Bishop Jack Toole said about annual conferences and general conferences. There are folks that kind of roll their eyes, but he said that he thought it was audacious that many people would come together, all with the best interest of the church at heart, and try to find common ground. And I have always been fascinated with that and thought that's true. I noticed that Patrick graciously noted that 2 deacons will be ordained and 1 elder, and a slightly larger group will be commissioned. It's about 90 minutes long. I commend it to your time. It's worth your hour and a half. So Other than that, I think that's all
see
I've got to say on the schedule right there.
Excellent. I see that Doug Wood from Mill Plain has got a hand up over there. So if you want to unmute yourself, Doug, and ask your question, share your thoughts.
Thanks so much. The only thing I really want to note is that I am a member of the conference rules committee, and sometimes the rules, well, they get a bad rap. They think people sometimes think that the conference has sat in a formerly smoke-filled room, finding ways to rule people out of order. The fact is, all the rules are out there. And the only rulings that get made are things that uphold what the rules are. So you have that opportunity. And I do encourage you to make use of that very helpful form about how to make a motion and how to use Robert's Rules of Order. Don't overthink it. Keep it simple. The idea is we want people to be involved and for everyone's voice to get heard. So that's the end of my shameless plug for the Rules Committee.
I appreciate it, Doug. Thank you so much. So yeah, I'm going to pull up this Robert's Rules PDF just because we're going to review it just a little bit right now, and we're going to play around to help you all understand, especially for those of you who are new, how we would engage with Robert's Rules in a focus session. So we are going to, instead of using one of the recommendations for the focus sessions, because we'll get to those, right, tomorrow and Monday, John and I are going to play a game. And the game that we're going to play for you is Angelina has made a resolution I made a recommendation to the annual conference, and my recommendation, and I'll put my language in chat here, and someone's going to make fun of me because it's not going to be phrased appropriately, but my resolution is that every single church must serve coffee and donuts after Sunday morning worship every Sunday of the year. So that is my recommendation to the annual conference. And that is what has come up at our focus session. And so what I'm going to do is use here our common procedure. Ha! You're hilarious, Patrick. So we're going to pretend that Nancy is the bishop, who is the convener of the session, and I will say, Madam Chairperson, and then Nancy will recognize me.
I recognize you. Go ahead.
Thank you. I move that we discuss recommendation A, which is that every church must serve coffee and donuts at Sunday mornings after worship for every single Sunday of the year. And then someone else would have to second it, and Patrick ably did that.
Okay.
And so now that the motion has been brought to the group and it has been seconded by Patrick, now we are open for discussion. So what that would look like in our Zoom capacity would be that folks would indicate, this is where I might get it wrong, and Patrick's going to help me. Probably, I'm guessing there is a way, watch the GNTV video, but you will indicate that you would like to speak either in favor or against, or you might have some other stuff that you might want to do when this resolution has come forward. Oh, I've got Doug and Stephen. Or do you want to speak to the motion, or am I already doing it wrong? Go ahead, Doug.
I don't know that you're doing it wrong, but I, as a member of the Rules Committee, I believe the committee would agree with me, and Jim's in here too, that the annual conference cannot require a local congregation to do hardly anything. But you could recommend that each church serve coffee and donuts, but not must serve.
Oh, see, so this is something, thank you, Doug. So this is something that would come up from the floor. So I'm curious, Doug, if you wanted to question my language How would you do that in practice from the floor? What would you say to based on our little cheat sheet here? What language would you use to make that point?
Well, generally, what would happen is that uh, any fresh motion coming onto the conference floor would indeed, it's got to have some time in there, and I'd have to look it up to see what the time limits are, but it would have to go to the rules committee to see if it fits in. The rules committee would probably come back with something like I just suggested, which is simply a slight rewording that would get it more into the sense of what we're doing. If I was on the floor, I would raise a point of order.
Point of order. Let's find it on our sheet. It's down here somewhere. I should know exactly where it is. A point of order. There, number 24, which is to insist on an adherence to the rules. So, and that is where Doug would make his point that we can't order people to do anything. We can make recommendations. All right, and then Stephen, you had your hand raised.
Yeah, I'd like to make a motion that the donuts be a switch to Krispy Kreme donuts specifically.
Oh, okay. Good idea, Stephen. So the way that we would do that here would be to modify the motion. So what Stephen wants to do is he wants to amend our motion and wouldn't be striking out the word donuts. He would be adding the word Krispy Kreme donuts. And then we would now get into a secondary discussion about whether or not we're going to add the words Krispy Kreme to this recommendation. And that would be our conversation. And let's say, for the sake of argument, that we have some conversation, there's some people in favor of it, there's some people against it, and then we would vote on whether or not we would make this addition. And let's assume, for the sake of argument, that 60% of people said, yes, we're in favor of adding the words Krispy Kreme. Great. That conversation has now wrapped up, and now we are going back to the original motion with the new language. And now we are back to discussing the entire motion as it stands, which has been now changed to, we will serve Krispy Kreme donuts and coffee after worship. And I'm curious, does anyone else want to make any amendments to this particular resolution? So you can just raise your hand, and I would see you in the participants there if you put a hand up. Or you can unmute yourself if you feel so bold. Oh, I see one hand. Oh, I see two hands. Okay, hold on there. You guys are going to jump to the top of my screen, I think. I say this optimistically. There we go. All right, Sharon. Oh, I'm sorry, Nancy, you're playing Bishop, so you need to recognize Sharon's hand.
Okay, I need to recognize Sharon. Doggone, I got so involved in this, I was going to make an amendment. I can't do that as a bishop. Shame on me. Okay, Sharon, we recognize you.
Thank you. I wouldn't be the chair of the Disability Ministry Committee without speaking up and saying that there are several people that would not want to eat Krispy Kreme donuts due to gluten issues and things like that. So we would need to, I recommend that we change that to Krispy Kreme donuts or other types of food that everyone can eat.
And so then our next thing would be that then we would discuss whether or not we're going to add these words to our motion. And let's say, for the sake of argument, that this time we also agreed on this. And we're like, yes, we'll add that. So see, our amendment's getting bigger, but we are still wordsmithing it so that it's acceptable for everyone, right? So we might do this for a while, making these amendments. But let's say we finally gotten to a point where we are like, yes, everyone is feeling good. No one's making any more changes to this.
Then I would call the question.
Please, that's right. John, are you calling the question?
I wouldn't. I would call the question at that point. In fact, Somebody may call it sooner. Put all the questions.
That's right. Exactly. And so calling the question is the phrase that you use when you say, I am ready to end debate. I want us to vote on this. And does calling the question need a second? I'm not sure about that. I don't think so.
And in doing that, the original or the final version of the recommendation needs to be read.
That's right. So we would say that we recommend that, or, the petition writers, the recommendation is that every church shall serve Krispy Kreme donuts and dietary alternatives. Maybe we put in a parenthetical and say like gluten-free, vegan, maybe we get real specific on that. And coffee every Sunday morning after worship. And then the entire group would take a vote. Everyone at the focus session would say yay or nay or abstain. And generally speaking, with Robert's rules, abstentions favor the yays side of it. And the last part where it gets a little funky here is if 90% of the people in the focus session agree with this recommendation, then it gets put onto what's called the consent calendar, and then it goes to the plenary, or the gathering of the whole. And so at the plenary session, we would no longer be debating the resolution or the recommendation about coffee and donuts, because that discussion has already happened. We just did it in our imaginary focus session. There are some creative ways to get around that if someone was like, I've got the world's strongest opinions on this, but you can read the conference rules, or you can look deeper into Robert's rules to figure out how to do that. But generally, if something's on the consent calendar, we assume that means that everyone feels good about it, and that is where the formal vote would happen, at which point it would be a majority rule vote. I've got Doug on my butt. I just keep looking at his face to make sure I'm saying all the right stuff. But that's how that would happen. If, however, we were at the focus session and only 85% of the people were in favor of coffee and donuts, then this motion would get sent to the plenary session where we would debate it all over again with everybody, including whoever. So if someone wasn't at the focus session, this is their chance at the plenary to have their opinions about our coffee and donut situation. Jim, I see you got your hand up. Another veritable member of the Rules Committee. You just gotta unmute yourself, Jim.
It just takes a little while to figure it out.
No worries.
I may have not been listening as closely as I should, but I think there was one step overlooked as you went through.
Oh.
After a call for the question, I think the first vote is whether or not it'll be called. And then there must be another vote on the actual language of the recommendation.
Yeah,
that's right.
That's correct. Yeah, when the questions, I call the question, and then you have to vote on whether the question's called. And then as soon as that, and I would say that's correct, Jim. I would say, generally speaking, when somebody calls the question, it's usually an affirmative vote. but yeah, you have to vote on that first, and once that's accepted, then you vote on the motion. But I think the point's still made. Although that's technically correct.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So basically, what we're trying to express to our new folks here is that even within a single motion, there can be lots and lots of voting that happens depending on what we decide to do with that recommendation. Which is why knowing motions for different needs is such a necessary and helpful thing. And the nice thing about having both the bishop and the rules committee, there's a lot of experienced folks who, if you are not sure, if you want to do something but you're not quite sure how to do it, there will be people there who will say, okay, it sounds like what you're trying to do is this, and this is how you would do that. So, don't get stressed out if you're if debate is happening and you're like, wait, I wanna limit the debate time. What do I do? You could use your cheat sheet, or you can reach out and ask that question. Why would one? So point 15 is limit debate. Let's say we've been discussing coffee and donuts for 45 minutes. Someone might say, I would like to move that we limit the debate to an additional 10 minutes. And then we would discuss whether or not we're going to do that. And then we would vote on that. And if we agreed, then we would have 10 more minutes to talk about coffee and donuts, but that would be it, unless someone made a motion to extend the time for another 10 minutes or something. So there is a lot, to Doug's earlier point, there's a lot of room to move within the conference rules, but familiarizing yourself with them beforehand really will set you up to take action in the focus sessions and potentially on the plenary floor if that happens.
There's a question about voting recorded by hand emoji polls other during focus sessions. If I recall correctly, that's up to the chair of the focus session. It's often by a show of hands. If I recall that correctly, I'm pretty sure somebody will correct me if I'm wrong on that. The chair can call for a poll to get it precise on that. When we were in person, the tellers would actually count those by a show of hands. And so we'll probably use the hands up emoji, I would guess. That would be the way we would do that.
Yeah, but it'll, when you attend focus sessions, that'll be included. There we go. Terry Toby's got it right in the chat there. Using the poll feature for official vote of the petition, but other features may be used for intermediate steps. So, for example, what she's saying.
I read poll session earlier, but I wasn't quite sure how that worked.
Yeah.
Thank you, Terry. Thanks, Terry.
Thanks, Terry. So yeah, what that means, just to be doubly clear there, is so for the Krispy Kreme friendly amendment, we might use, the hand emoji or something, but when we're finally voting on the recommendation that we are going to send to the rest of annual conference at the plenary session, then we will be using the poll feature, and I am confident that Terry and the wonderful folks at the annual conference office will explain exactly how that's going to work at the focus sessions themselves. So do not worry, it'll all make sense, we promise. But yeah, that is the sort of the quick and dirty of how you would engage with recommendations. And so does anyone have any questions about what we just did? If so, you can put them in the chat or you can raise your hand. But otherwise, I think that pretty well gives you just a little bit of a simpler example. Of course, our recommendations tend to be multi-paragraph, and so would highly encourage you to really dig into those recommendations so that you're well prepared for focus sessions.
And I would like to set a question in your mind, and I'll ask you this question a little bit later to put it into chat. There are some of you who have been conference delegates for a very long time, and there are many of you who are absolutely new. So the question I have is for those who have been here a long time. What is the one piece of wisdom that you would share with new people coming on board? And you can put that in chat at any time, but share your wisdom with that. You have experience to share. And for those people who are absolutely new, what is the one concern that you have? So we'll go on and talk about a few other things, and you can answer these at any time in the chat. But I'd love to get that wisdom recorded. So I think we're back to Angelina.
Back to you, actually, Nancy, because we have reviewed Robert's rules. So now we're going to talk about next week's election and encourage people to pray about it and think about running.
Yes, I'm a conference lay leader, and Angelina has been my associate conference lay leader now for 4 years. And what we do is we really look out for and advocate for, provide resources for whatever we can for the laity of the Pacific Northwest Conference. And I heard some time ago that laity is 98.2% of the church members. There's a lot of us. And one of the things that we're focusing on in the next couple of years, and the associate lay leader the new one will be very involved in this, is leadership development for laity. How can we step up and into greater involvement with our church, with our district, with our conference, and even nationally and internationally? And with that involves some learning areas, some experience areas, and we're really going to be promoting that for the next several years. The associate lay leader is my sounding board, and also kind of my partner in doing what I do. You also automatically become a member of the Association of Annual Conference Lay Leaders, which is an international body that involves lay leaders from the Methodist Church all over the world. And we learn from one another. We address issues and concerns together. We learn from each other, and we grow tremendously in our relationship together. And that's something that an associate conference lay leader will be doing. Let me see if I can pick up a few other things here. Training of district lay leaders, and in Pacific Northwest, we have 5 districts. And so we have at least five lay leaders, and sometimes district co-leaders involved in that, and we form what's known as the Board of Laity. And I am the Associate Conference Lay Leader to lead those meetings. And it's a lot of fun. We work with programs. We work with visibility of laity. We work with supporting the ministry of laity, and particularly the leadership development skills of laity. And so, Angelina, you were going to talk, let me back up. We will be electing a person on the 14th. And if any of you are interested in filling that position, please let me know, and so that we can bring your name up on the 14th, and be willing to, I think we're in a Zoom setting, be willing to talk about why you'd like to do that, why you'd like to be a conference lay leader here in the Pacific Northwest, why now, and what do you hope to learn and gain from that? So that's going to happen in a week. So let me know if you're interested. Now back to you, Angelina.
Thank you, Nancy. Yeah, I would just add on top of what Nancy said. So full confession, I'm a bit of an order muppet. So I want to speak to you a little bit practically about what the position entails. So as Associate Conference Lay Leader, you sit on the Board of Laity. The Board of Laity is a group. You can read all about it in the conference rules to find out who all is involved in the Board of Laity. It's a lot of folks, but in addition to the conference lay leader and associate conference lay leader, it's also your district lay leaders, the UMW president, it's a whole bunch of folks. And so that group meets regularly to discuss what is happening in the life of our lay people across the annual conference, and look for ways that we can collaborate together to support laity in general. And also occasionally take on large-scale projects together. So to give an easy example, over the course in the first year of the pandemic, the Board of Laity offered a Zoom workshop on stress, loss, and grief. That was attended by a whole bunch of folks, and was super useful as a learning tool. Some of our district lay leaders focus a lot, will brainstorm training opportunities for the laity of their district, and some of that might be incubated within the Board of Laity. So you're looking at either usually, let's say, quarterly gatherings of the Board of Laity, sometimes twice a year. It really depends on the business before us. But to Nancy's point, with a real pivoting focus into lay leadership development, there may be more to be done. The nice thing about Board of Laity is it's kind of a sky's the limit position. Beyond that, other things that you work on. So Board of Laity puts together the Laity Orientation for annual conference. Every year we put together the Laity Session for annual conference. So those are some specific tangible deliverables that the Board of Laity puts out. And then beyond that, it's really, as Nancy said, empowering and supporting the laity. And the laity of our conference, I mean, I don't have to tell all of you who are in this room, right? But are amazing, and everyone is doing so much good work and doing their best to just like transform their particular part of the map to make disciples of Jesus Christ for the transformation of the world, right? So we the Board of Laity is a really great place to sort of hear all of those stories about all of the things that are happening everywhere and find those opportunities for engagement and collaboration across spaces. So and as Nancy said, the annual Association of Conference Lay Leaders annual gathering is also a great learning environment. It's also a great way to get to know conference lay leaders from across the country and across the globe and see how lay leadership is done in a lot of different places, which is such a great idea generator. I know that our speaker for Laity Session is Sharon Gregory, former president of the AACLL and also the lay leader for Western Pennsylvania. Nancy, is that right? Yeah. So again, that opportunity brings us speakers who bring us wisdom to the PNW. But yeah, it's a wonderful position, and there's so much possibility and potential with it. And yeah, if you do not currently have a 3.5-year-old running all over the place in your house, you may be ideal for this position. If you like to talk to people, if you are organized, can think systematically, do sort of big picture thinking, this is it's a really great position, and it's a great way to support the laity of the whole annual conference. So I really hope you're going to pray about it and think about if this might be a good position for you. And if Nancy and I cheerleading this position, Jolie asks a good question. So prior to the pandemic, we did a combination of Zoom and in-person gatherings because since our district lay leaders are all across the state, we gathered, I think, once a year in person. But since the pandemic, most of our work has been done on Zoom. I know there is a desire to be able to return to occasionally gathering again in person, just because, as we all know, there's the meeting after the meeting and things like that. So, and that opportunity for fellowship and further collaboration that, while possible on Zoom, is also, it's just fun to see each other, right? But generally speaking, most of the work currently is being done online and via the phone and email and all of those ways. So that's a really good question, Joe. Yeah, does anyone have any other questions about this position or about that?
No, Angelina?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, John.
John, I don't have any questions about the position. I think you've done a great job of it. I just wanted to follow up real quickly. You made a statement about amazing laity. And I scrolled through the participant list. I'm sure I missed somebody. But of the names that I scrolled through, I saw more than one certified lay minister who are leading churches. Some of them have been doing it for decades, and really great churches that I've personally had the opportunity to visit. There's a couple of members of the Rules Committee. There's a former chair of the Council of Finance and Administration who's coming back onto the Council of Finance and Administration. There's a person who's been on the Board of Pensions. So there's just a lot of roles out there that happen in a church because people are involved, and that the Associate Conference Lay Leader is an opportunity for folks to be involved at a place where the rubber meets the road, so to speak. And the efforts that the Board of Laity is making right now, and the work that's being done with some great support out of the Office of Connectional Ministries and the cabinet in the area of lay leadership development, is just really fun to be there right now. So yeah, I would encourage anyone who thinks they might be interested in that position to do some discernment about it and put your hat in the ring.
Nancy, could you drop your email in the chat for folks if anyone is fire has been sparked in the past couple of minutes there?
What has really caught my interest has been the wisdom and the concerns that are being shared. And I'd like to read those out real quickly. First of all, be patient. And I have a couple of people saying that. Be patient during the focus and plenary sessions. Things seem to move slow, but they do move. Come prepared, which means bring snacks, knitting, read through the recommendations ahead of time, and be ready with your questions. My concern is that my vote for my church might not get counted because I get confused. And if that happens, ask somebody, put it in the chat, say, help. What am I supposed to be doing right here, right now? Lean on each other. That's a good thing. Really read the handbook so you're prepared. My first year, this person said, I just listened. Take a break or get comfortable before joining a focus session or the plenary. You may be busy for longer than you think. So when you have a chance to get up, walk around, move about a bit, take a break, do it. Another one says, please leave peanuts at home because there are people with very serious allergies to peanuts. They don't even have to eat them. They just need to sit next to someone else who is.
Not such a huge problem this year since we're all virtual, but
that's right.
Really a great comment from Lynn, but probably not a major concern this year since we're virtual.
Not at all.
But it's well worth mentioning. The
annual conference deals with the business before it. So if you come with a notion about what annual conference should be doing, you might be disappointed.
Well, and that's a case, Nancy, to interrupt you, that's a case where what Angelita talked about and what we did with the little donuts kind of thing is an opportunity to influence the business before the annual conference. So if you think what the annual conference should be doing is such and such, then that's the way that you get the annual conference to do that. There's a lot to annual conference, as Angelina noted earlier. There's some great worship, even when we do it online. A lot of us would like to be back together again for the camaraderie that's there, and we'll eventually get there. But if you want to influence what the annual conference should be doing, there's ways to do that. So.
And another one is to use a binder, organize your materials in a binder so you can easily move from page to page. And I know it's all online, but I get really sidetracked sometimes when I have to go back and forward in a document while keeping tabs with the conversation that's going on. And I love this statement, and have fun. Enjoy this, learn all you can at this, because it's really a pretty unique experience. And to have such, by the way, there are the same number of lay delegates as there are clergy. And so your vote really counts. And the one thing I haven't heard in this yet is that you are not a representative of your church. You don't need to take a poll of what your church thinks about this issue. You can go to comfort and just vote your conscience as a United Methodist. So did I say that right, John and Andy?
That's correct. If you are elected a lay member of the annual conference and you vote your conscience, you are a member of the annual conference as a lay person. So you're not being sent there as a representative or something else. So you are to vote your conscience on that. It's a little bit of a hard concept to grasp initially, but that's what that means, being a lay member of the annual conference. And there is, as Nancy said it, we have a parity rule so that there are the same number of lay persons as there are ordained persons that are members of the annual conference. Yep. With equal voice and vote.
I want to thank all of you who shared concerns or wisdom. that's how we learn generationally. We learn from the folks who have been there before us. Let me check, Angie, with you, and with you, John. Are we ready for our closing prayer now?
Unless there are any questions. And with gratitude and thanks for those folks that have taken the time to join us. Some 88 or 90 I see in the participants list. That's good.
I saw 100 at one point.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, then thank you all for being a part of this. And join me now in prayer. Take a deep breath. And it's always good. And remember, throughout conference, take a deep breath. Holy One, we have gathered this evening in your presence, in your name, and in your love. Help us prepare and participate in this gathering that is coming before us. Help us learn, discern, vote, and celebrate what is happening in our church. Let us bring our whole heart, our whole mind, and our whole spirit to this task to which we have been elected. And, dear God, be with us as we return to our home tonight and are with our loved ones. In the name of your Son, Jesus Christ. Amen.